All right. As Jeff was saying earlier, this tool was done in conjunction with Utah Legal Services um, and a TIG grant that they had. I wanted to go over a little bit on the help site, some of the required fields and some of the presumptions that we made when we were doing that. And I was actually working at Utah Legal Services when we developed this. So any problems you find with the tool, I guess you could say is probably my fault. So I'll take the blame for everything. Um, but as you can see, there are some system fields that are going to be required that will need to be set up and used if they're not being used currently in order for this to work. Because that's really important, I wanted to go over those specifically. So we have the CSR eligible field. Um, the system uses the CSR eligible equals yes to determine whether or not the case should be included in the randomization tool. I have had some questions about what about duplicates and other types of things. Um, the presumption was that the CSR eligible tool would have taken that all into account. So if the case was a duplicate, it would not be CSR eligible. If the case wasn't closed to a proper closing code, it would not be CSR eligible. And so that's why the system uses the CSR eligible field in Legal Server as its criteria. In order to get the offices assigned properly, it also needs, each case has to have an assigned office. So hopefully that's being done with all of your agencies, but we do require that as well so that we can get the percentages between the offices and stuff in the randomization tool. Because some agencies use units and stuff for the office field, we also have a new field that should be showing up on your site called the LSC Self-Inspection Office. This is actually under the offices lookup. So if you go to your admin tab and go to offices, there should be an LSC Self-Inspection Office field for each of your offices so that you can designate what the office is for the self-inspection. And again, this was created because some agencies, Utah included, had specific units that they wanted to mark as offices, but they were part of their larger office. So we had to create that field in order for the system to know which offices were going to actually be divided for LSC purposes for the self-inspection. And then of course, it uses date closed and disposition as well. The case has to be closed and the date closed has to be within the year that it's there. So in order to get to the self-inspection tool, you would just go to your admin page, and I'm using the Utah Legal Services test site here because the data is randomized and it's not going to be confidential. But if you go to the admin tab and then just type in self-inspection, you should have a self-inspection option. If you don't, you can send a help support email to Legal Server and we can get that on there, but everyone should have that now on their live site. So as mentioned, the first thing here is really the total cases in your sample, the minimum cases, et cetera. These are all going to be calculated based upon the instructions that you get from Legal Service Corporation. You each get a guidance for conducting a 2020 self-inspection, and it gives you the minimum and maximum numbers that you have, and you have to calculate those. Generally, the maximum is going to be 375, and then minimum is 15 per office. And then you do need to put in the sample size date. So what year is this self-inspection for? Currently it's set to be, I set it here already for 2020, so it's going to be January 1st to 12/31/2020, which is the calendar year. Then once you put in those numbers, you do have to click save. If you don't click save, it won't save the numbers and then generate the proper list. So you do want to click save before you generate the list. Once you do that, then you can generate the list. And what is happening here is in the background, it's following those sample selection instructions that Legal Server Corporation has sent out. So it's looking at the number of cases that you have that are fit within the sample. So those cases that are marked as CSR eligible, that were closed during that year, that have a disposition of closed as well. It's looking at the office, it's looking at the numbers in each offices, getting a percentage of each one, and then determining how many cases in each cycle you need to do in the self-inspection. The nice thing is it just automatically randomizes it. Once you generate the list, you'll have the list generated. It will tell you the date and the time that it was generated. So I generated this list at 8:51. And then once it's generated, you can go into the list. So if I click here to manage the list, you will see again that the list is generated. You can actually lock the list, so you can't make any changes to it if you want to. Down here for the snapshot, it will actually show you the number of cases that it pulled. So it will tell you the number of cases in each office. It will tell you the percentage, and it will also tell you what number of cases are going to be in your self-inspection. Then down below, you can see we have 300 in this sample. And so it gives you the randomized list, but in addition to that, you can actually do the self-inspection from this list as well. So I can go into review self-inspection, and this will take me to the self-inspection form. So by default, it will give you the case matter ID. It will tell you when it was opened and closed. It will tell you what the office is. And then once it's reviewed, it will tell you who reviewed it and what the review date is. But you can go through each of the self-inspection questions here and answer them. So I'm just going to throw in some numbers here so that you can see what happens once I do this. And I'm just going to say yes. Hopefully these all make sense. I'm not even reading the questions, to be honest, but I guess since I said yes above, I should make this not applicable. I'll even make
My
a no
goodness,
here.
why do we have that long language over there, Craig? What is that all about?
Oh, well, this long language over here on the left are the questions from the self-inspection, right? If you look at the LSC self-inspection form, these are the questions and how they do it. So that's why it's there. You can also add notes. So if you want to make any notes to the self-inspection, you can add those notes here. And then you can save this and return to the self-inspection list. This is going to take you back to your list, and you can see here that this case has now been reviewed. It will tell you who reviewed it. It will tell you the date that it reviewed it as well. That way you can go through each of the self-inspection cases that you need to do and do that as well. So I have a question in the chat room about what the difference is between the number of cases in the office and cases in self-inspection. There's not much difference in this, as you can see. It did have to round it up to get there. So this is telling you the rounded percentage point versus how many it pulled. So sometimes it might be that you might be under 15, so it has to go up to 15, or this one rounded up so that it went to 144 so that you got the 300 numbers. So it's just telling you that information. And then I have another question about what method would a user use to review the case record while in the form? So that's a great question. As you know, when you go to the form, so let me just go to the form here. You can see that there's a case here as well. So you can actually open up the case in a new tab, or if you have two screens, you can open it up in a new window. So I've sometimes done it in a window where I was looking at the case in one window and filling out the form here. So you can use either one of those methodologies, but you are able to open up the case as well while you're looking at the form. Some of the information is here as well. So you'll see that on the list view, it does tell you whether or not it's a PAI case. It tells you whether it was timely closed based upon the timing closing block in Legal Server. It will tell you the closing code so that you know right here whether it's extended service or limited service. Of course, it will tell you the office and then the date closed as well.
And just to go back for a second, what you did is you right-clicked, right? You opened that.
Correct. I right-clicked and opened in a new window. Yep.
Right. So you can switch back and forth between tabs.
Yep. And then the next question I see in the chat room is, can more than one person work on the site at the same time after the case lists are generated? And the answer to that is yes. You will want to coordinate because obviously you won't want to be in the same case reviewing the same case at the same time. If you do review the same case at the same time, it's not a big deal. Whoever saves it last is going to be the one that gets saved, right? Just like any other thing in Legal Server. But you can definitely do that and have somebody start at the bottom of a list and have somebody else start at the top of the list. So you can definitely have more than that. Then there's one that says my total cases in the sample set is set to 300, yet my cases in self-inspection is 447. So that may be an issue. We may need to look at that. So if you would submit that as a support ticket, we'll have to look at why that's happening. This was tested obviously at Utah Legal Services, and it worked for them. So but there's a lot of calculations going in the background. So just let me know if there's any issues like that, and we can look at that as well. The next question is, can you sort or filter by office? Unfortunately, there is no ability to sort by office. You can export it into a CSV file or an Excel sheet and sort it that way, but there's no way, unfortunately, to sort it here. The only way to sort it here is by case. That could be an improvement, of course, that you could ask for in the future, but it's not something you can do. You can sort by close date, review date, so that you can see all of the ones that aren't reviewed, but Office, unfortunately, is grayed out, so you're not able to sort by that. And then the next question is, will this work if a program does not use LSC self-inspection office? We only use the office field for offices. Yeah, so the LSC self-inspection office is a new field that was put on your site when this was enabled on your site. This system does require that that field be filled in. If you don't fill in the LSC self-inspection office for your offices, you will get an error or won't get a list of cases. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to go to your admin tab. Once you go to your admin tab, you can go to your offices here. And then you'll have to edit your office. So you can just click on office, you can edit it. You'll have this field here for LSC self-inspection office, and you can pick which office it is that fits in the LSC office. But even if the LSC office is going to be the same as your office, unfortunately, you do have to go fill that out for each of your offices. So that is a required field. Is the timely closing block just the CSR question on the closing page, or do you have a system specific to this? So the timely closing field that's showing up here on this list is the yes or no field that you use. There is a block in Legal Server that will automatically calculate the yes or no for the timely closing, but it's also editable by you. So obviously if the block says that it wasn't timely closed, but as you probably know, the block just really uses the date open and the date closed and the closing code to determine whether it was timely closed. But it doesn't take into account those cases that where you did something the next year, even though it was advice only. And so it really is timely closed. So you have to manually do that, but it's whatever that field says as far as timely close goes. And of course, timely closed would also be CSR eligible. So all of these should say yes in this sample case, because if it wasn't timely closed, then in theory, it would also not be CSR eligible. So. And then I already answered how you add the LSC inspection office. Got another question here about after clicking generate new list and clicking the pencil, no cases are displayed. A no results found message appears. That generally will happen if you don't have your LSC office set. So you do have to go in and do the LSC office set for that to actually generate a list. If you do have that set and it's still not generating, you can let us know. But that's really the main cause of why that's not generating, is because that LSC office is not set. Next question. So when someone goes to review the case, they will go to the self-inspection page within the admin page. Yes, so in order to have this link, you will want to make sure that you go to the LSC page and review the self-inspection here so that it will count it as there. And this self-inspection form, I might add, is also a static form. Because of all of the underlying programming underneath it, we made that a static form. So it's not a form that you can change. If LSC does change the form in the future, that will have to be changed by a developer. The form hasn't changed for several years, so our hope is that it won't change for the next several years as well. But that form is static, so the only way to get to it is to go through this system. All right, let's see. Another question is, if we do not use CSR eligible field, we cannot use this tool. Correct. So the CSR, this tool uses the CSR eligible field. Um, so you do have to use that field in order for this to work. Another question of where is the LSC office set? So again, it's set if you go to your admin tab and then go to offices. It will be here under office. And then you can click on the pencil to edit your office, and the field should appear there. So you'll see this LSC self-inspection office has a pull down of all the different offices you have, and so then you can pick which office it is that you want to have it for the LSC office. And yes, likely won't happen this year, but the next question is whether or not we can add a sort by office. That seems like a reasonable request to me. Jeff is on the call, so if it's not, he can definitely jump in and say, no way, but I'm guessing that that's something that we can do. Likely won't happen this year, but probably will happen in the future, so.
Yep, we may not have it for this reporting round, but unless there's something I'm missing for the complexity of the list view, it seems like something we could do. And as Craig said, if it's really annoying, you can export to CSV onto your computer and sort them in a spreadsheet until we've added that.
All right, and then the other part of this tool, once you're done with the self-inspection, I'm actually going to go back to the one that I pulled for last year. Because once you're done, it will actually give you a report of the errors as well. So if you go back to your self-inspection tool and you look at your generated list, this one was for last year and it was locked. So I can manage that list. You'll notice here that there's a report snapshot. So I can actually generate a report using this list once all of the reviews are done. Once I generate the list, I can then view the list. So you'll notice that this I created it twice because I just wanted to make sure it was working. But I can now view the report essentially, and it will go through each of the different cases, and it will tell you how many errors there are in each one. And then for your purposes, for your report, you can determine whether or not corrective actions were there and save that so that you can then transpose that to your GAR report. But it does total those up for you as well. All right, and that in short is really the self-inspection tool that we've created.
So
Let me see
Craig,
if
there
there's
was a question that was excellent. I hope a lot of people are saying, oh my gosh, it's going to save me a bunch of time. And I really hope that it does. Also, the team at Utah are very detail oriented. So please take a look at the help site and make sure you've configured things correctly. And odds are the stats are going to work out correctly. But if you find issues, let us know. We definitely want to help you be precise. But there was a question if you could say again what the difference is between total cases of how the cases in the sample are calculated.
Yeah, so what it does is it looks at the sample size, so it looks at the total cases, and this is a little bit off because it doesn't actually match the 6,000 because of when we did this, but it tells you the sample size for each office. It gives you the percentage of cases in each office, and then this is the direct translation of the percentage with the sample. So this will give you the number of cases in each office as far as percentages go. And then this one is the rounded up one that you need to do in order to meet your sample size. So not a lot of difference between these two, but they may differ mainly just because of the uprising. Like here we have 143, but here we have 144. Because the percentage here is really like 48.9%. It's just rounded to the without any decimals. So.
Great, and you know the number you're supposed to analyze because LSC told you, right?
Correct. Yep. All right, and then is the tool for admins only? It is underneath the admin tab, but you can send the link to other people and they can have access to that. As far as I remember, there is not anything in a roles permission that gives you access to this. So as long as they have the URL up here at the top, they'll be able to access it. But it is underneath the admin tab. But other people other than admins can actually review the list if that's necessary. Then another question is, once the person does a review, can they modify it? And the answer to that is yes. So even though I've reviewed it, let me go back to, once you lock it, they cannot. So once it's done and you lock it, you'll notice here I have no links to review it on this one. So you can lock it to prevent any changes, which I would recommend you doing once it's done. But until then, you actually can go in, and even though it says it's reviewed, the link is still hot, so I can actually go back in here and I can update the review if I need to. So if I need to make changes, if I wasn't sure about something, I can still edit that even after it's been done.
And why do you recommend that you lock it when you're really, really done?
One, so that you have it historically, in case LSC has any questions about it, you can show them the list, you can show them what you did, and it can't be changed. And secondly, once you've reported, you really don't want that data to change. And that would be another reason I would lock it, is because it just gives you a historical values of what you did and that type of thing. And then I'm not sure about the error. Again, I would just submit a support ticket for that error that you received. But I would also, before I submit the support ticket, I would go back through and make sure that all the fields that are required for the tool to work are filled in by your agency. So again, those fields that are required are the assigned office, the disposition, the date closed, the CSR eligible field, as well as the LSC self-inspection office field. So I would do some checking there just to make sure all of those fields are on all of your cases. But if they are, and you're still getting that error, then I would submit a support ticket. A report of some type after completing the self-inspection to analyze the results. Sorry if I missed that, if it's covered already. Yeah, so there is a report. So up here at the top, you have this generate report using this list. If I generate the report, then I'll be able to see, I only have one case that I've reviewed here. I could still generate the report to see what it is. But if I generate the report, what it will do is it will give you those different categories that you're required to report on for LSC. And it will tell you the number of errors in those categories as well. Right now, of course, I did mark one no, so I have one error on the one case that I've reviewed. And then, of course, you can also, just so you have it, determine whether or not you've taken the corrective action or not. And then once you do that, you can create the report snapshot, which will save the information so that you have that as well for historical purposes. So you can definitely see that report. Can each office use this tool to do their self-inspection? So it's designed to be used agency-wide. So you'll get the list for each office, but yes, each office, you could say, you could send them the link of the generated list and say, we want you to review your office's cases, and then they could use it that way as well. There's another question that says, I assigned the LSC office from admin offices, deleted previous list and generated new list. No results were found. Do I need to make any other changes? So again, I would just verify that all of the fields that are required are there, like CSR eligible. If you don't have anything in the CSR eligible field, for example, on your cases, you won't be able to generate a list either. Usually the date closed and the disposition of closed is done automatically by legal server, so that's probably not going to be an issue. What might be the issue is the CSR eligible field. So I would check that on your cases to see if that's there. If you do have the CSR eligible field filled in for all of your cases, then you might need to submit a ticket for that. But those are the two things that it's really looking for, is your office. The other one might be the assigned office. So if you don't have an assigned office on your case, that also could cause there to be nothing to be there. Another question is, I assume LSC has approved use of this tool. Yes, this was done as part of a TIG grant, and LSC reviewed it and said it was good. So they do, it is okay to use. Another question is if I generate this report, does it stay static with the same cases even if you exit and come back another day? Yes, and the answer to that is yes. So as long as you don't generate a new list, the list will stay static and it will be there so you can have as many people working on it as you want to. And that's why it comes up here as a list. I think I can just go right back here. So you can see the generated list here, and when you go to manage list, it will be the same list as when you generated it. If you do generate a new list, it will give you a new list. If you need to delete this one for whatever reason, you can actually delete it and then generate a new list. But once the list is generated, it does remain static. And then the next question is, if we test this and run a list, can we rerun it? And the answer to that is yes. Again, you can delete the list you generated first and then regenerate the list. One thing that I would caution you on is if you actually fill out the self-inspection form, that would not be a good idea if you're going to change the list, because if the new list doesn't have that case as part of the self-inspection, it might cause problems. But as long as you generate the list and then do the forms from there, you should be okay. And can you unlock a list and make changes? The answer to that is yes. So you can lock the list, but once, even if I'll go to this one that's currently locked, you'll notice that there is the ability to change it. So it says locked yes, but I can change it to no. I can update that. Once I do that, you'll see that those links are now active and I could go in and make changes. So it's even if you pre-lock it and accidentally lock it and need to go make changes, you can go back and unlock it. All right. Any other questions? So there is one that's,
go ahead.
I was just to say, there's one that says we have a CSR eligible field, but has nothing in it. Is there a way to set a value to the field for all the CSR eligible cases? Not in bulk. As far as I'm aware, you would have to go into each case and designate it as CSR eligible. This might be, again, something that you don't want to take the time to do for this reporting period, but if you implement this for next year, then you could definitely use this tool next year. But unfortunately, you do have to do that on a case-by-case basis. And then another question, are people completing the fields in Legal Server and also completing the self-inspection forms? And the answer to that is that's the idea. You definitely can do the list as well as complete the forms online. And that was what this tool anticipated that you would do. You, of course, don't have to. You could complete the forms manually, or you could complete the forms, however else you want to and just get your list this way. And I must have gone back too many times because I'm trying to find the actual list again. Sorry. But the idea would be that you would fill out the form here and it would give you your report. It just makes it nice. But again, you don't have to use the form as it is here. If you need to fill out the form manually or whatever, you can also do it that way and just use this as the generated list if you prefer.
Great. This hopefully this. How much time? I think you calculated, Craig, what you thought it saved you in time for the LSC reporting.
Yeah, I can say based upon my self-inspection and reporting previously, where I had to randomize the list myself and then I had to send them out and then we had to do the form. My calculation was that, I mean, this is anecdotal. I didn't actually time myself for each one, but it based upon the people that did the self-inspection, we generally agreed that it saved us about 50% of the time that it took us to do it before. So it saved us half the time that we used before. There is another question that was submitted about whether or not we'll preserve the self-inspections done historically over years. And the answer to that is yes. So the generated lists and the self-inspection remain here. They will not be deleted unless you delete them yourself. So you have the ability to delete them, but you also have the ability to keep them here historically as well.
And if that turns out to be, if that's an essential part of your chain of proof, there's nothing wrong. Then I encourage you to download that CSV and store it in a safe, secure place since it's got client information on it. So you also have it there.
There is another question about where the CSR eligible field appears or should appear. Obviously, that can be very different for the different agencies. I would guess, if I had to guess, it would be on your closing form. If it's not on your closing form, then I'm guessing it may not be something that you use, but I would check there first. You can always add it to your closing form as well. It's a field that you can add to anywhere really that you want to on any case profile or on any auxiliary form. So that's just a field that's available to you as well. The CSR eligible block, where if you use the CSRV, I think it's the V2 block to determine CSR eligibility, that also uses that CSR eligible field. So if you're using that block, it should be getting set automatically by that block. But again, you may need to be overriding it and that type of thing. But my guess would be it would be on your closing form if I had to guess. The next question is, can the case matter number field be added to the report, or is the report not modifiable? I'm not sure what report you're talking about. If you look here on the manage list report, you're probably talking about here. So we don't have the case number here on this filter. It is, if you go into the form, it is actually here, so you can see it there. But if you need it on this form, again, that might be something that we might be able to add to the list view, although it probably won't happen this year, but definitely it could be on our wish list to add to the list view along with being able to filter by office. So those could be two things that we can do to improve the list, but that currently is not available.
Great, thank you, Craig. So if folks would like to play with this, you can of course do it first on your demo site if you'd like and experiment there so you don't end up with reports cluttering your live site. Please take a look at the help site. Even in this meeting, right, there are